Well, hello again. Good Friday evening, once again. This is part two of the Friday afternoon session of the 2018 North Carolina Republican Party Convention. Okay, so we left off at the Platform Committee report. and believe it or not, usually in most years this area is usually kind of dry, the dry part of the business session. But today, believe it or not, was actually pretty good. We had some very lively debate, and I think we definitely did some good things with the platform here. There's a couple things I didn't like, but of course I'll let you know about that later on in this broadcast. First, a little housekeeping note. If you're looking for a credentials report, the convention, they do three. They do one Friday afternoon, they do one Saturday morning, and then they do one Saturday afternoon. What I'm going to do is do one credentials report, and I'm going to take all the data for each county. Like, let's say Wake County. They have 5 delegates one day, 7 delegates on Saturday morning, and then 9 on Saturday afternoon. Well, if I average those three together, then my report will say 7 delegates for Wake County. So I'm just going to take the average number and go with that for my delegate count. And I'm going to do one report. It's going to be Saturday evening or sometime probably Sunday or Monday. I'll get to that. So anyway, let's talk about this platform. First, we have Representative Larry Pittman, a really good conservative member of the state legislature, wanted to put in there driving watercraft, while impaired should face significant punishment. That was added to the platform without objection. And when I say without objection, I mean that it was added without any debate. Okay. Next, we have I'm sorry to say, a kook in the platform debate. Her name, she's a young lady in her early 20s, named Christina Williams of Wake County. And I'll tell you, the lady there, she's got balls, though, because, she made a motion to strike the marriage amendment part of the platform. In other words, marriage amendment being we support marriage between one man, one woman. Her argument was it's been determined that the Supreme Court of the U.S. Has made the decision that marriage is between a woman. It could be between a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. Gender doesn't really matter, according to the Supreme Court. She also says it's not relevant, and the Republican Party is supposed to be the party of limited government. We should not dictate who marries who. Excuse me. Opposition. Steve Radner, Beaufort County, another one of my favorite delegates over the years, he stated the GOP has always stood for marriage between a man and a woman. And the U.S. Supreme Court does not tell the state of North Carolina what to do. In other words, does not tell the North Carolina Constitution what to do. And the government doesn't define marriage. God does. Very strong points here, Mr. Radner. Then we have opposition. This is from a gentleman from, a lady from Gaston County. I didn't get her name, but no, she was a lady. She says, if we remove the marriage amendment, then we essentially agree with the Supreme Court's decision. Then we have Dan Joyner, who's a younger guy, probably about my age, from Sampson County. It says the GOP has always been about faith and family and states' rights and the 10th Amendment. Now, this passed, strike marriage amendment from the platform. This passed, to preserve the marriage amendment in the platform, passed by a margin of 89% to 11%, which in my opinion is very good. It's very encouraging that the North Carolina GOP, unlike the Indiana Republican Party, does not want to soften or modify its stance on marriage, I should say. Great. Well done, fellow delegates. Next, we have Dr. Ada Fisher from she's from Rowan County. And she's talking about criminal justice reform, and she wanted to put in a sentence into the platform that says, "We call for the examination of all mandatory sentencing for non-violent crimes to ensure fairness and justice in its application." Her argument is that President Trump pardoned a man for a drug crime after serving 21 years in jail. And she says these nonviolent offenders that go to jail, it fills up the jail unnecessarily. Then we have opposition from Carl Newman of Macon County. He says it doesn't make sense to mandatory reform. It doesn't make sense to reform a mandatory sentence. Okay, I can sort of buy what he's selling there. More support for Dr. Fisher's amendment. The United States has the highest rate of incarceration. If someone is serving a life sentence for a nonviolent crime, that should be reviewed. But then somebody else made a point of opposition. Says driving while impaired is a nonviolent offense. If we reform mandatory sentencing for nonviolent acts, then people will probably be more willing to go out and get drunk and then drive a motor vehicle. That's also a pretty good point. Let's see. Now, Dr. Fisher's amendment failed. It was fairly close, though. It was 56% against and 44% for Dr. Fisher's amendment. I would have to say I would probably have to agree with Dr. Fisher. I think the whole argument of, drug addicts in prison, and they're sitting there in prison, they're not, getting any help really, and they're crowding the prisons, and our tax dollars go to, prison meals and prisoner care. It's just, it's a better. Dr. Fisher definitely has a great point there, so I salute her on that. Let's see. Next thing we have is oppose the reinstatement of straight ticket voting. This was adopted without objection. Also changed free trade to fair trade. That was also adopted without debate or without objection. Let's see here. Then we have an amendment on school safety. While supporting the Second Amendment, this passed 75-25. Very overwhelming there. And then we have, of course, somebody makes a motion and debate on platform that passes overwhelmingly. Then we have a motion to adopt the platform. Okay. And this passed 93% to 7%. So I want to salute the 7% who wanted to stick around a little longer to debate the platform. Great stuff on that, 7%. After that, there was we had a little bit of chaos at the end. It's one of my pet peeves, I should say. There was a motion to dismiss the convention. And of course, there was about 50 people said, yeah. Second was another 50 people. So everybody starts getting out of their seats, okay? But before that, there's a couple announcements. But people aren't listening. They're, getting out of the convention hall as quick as they can. And that's really one of my pet peeves. I mean, maybe it appears there's a lot of people who don't take this convention as seriously as I do. As I talked about in the last video, there's a bunch of people that wait to the last minute on Friday and then leave from Raleigh and go to the convention, and they have absolutely no extra time in their schedule, and they get to an accident, and then the credentials committee feels sorry for them and gives them extra time, and aka breaks the rules to have them register late. Well, in this particular situation, Robin Hayes is not one of my favorite people, but he needs to be respected. And in this particular situation, an overwhelming majority of the delegates that were at this convention really disrespected him by, he was talking and they just kept going out of the room, like nobody was speaking. It's horrible. I mean, and the problem is I've seen this behavior in elementary school, middle school, high school, college. It's like, oh my gosh, I just, as soon as that bell rings, as soon as that clock hits 2:50, I need to be out of here, Even if my teacher has something extra important to say. In this case, Robin Hayes talked about, hey, the electronic voting that they started today, really, he was talking about had a really positive impact in his opinion. He talked about, hey, we have more time for debate and business, and the results are a lot clearer, And also, Dallas Woodhouse was up there announcing that they still have tickets for the comedy dinner tonight. And then Cordy Lewandowski is the speaker at lunch tomorrow. And then dinner, of course, they have that Second Amendment gala. And the prayer breakfast Sunday morning. Now, excuse me. Sorry. Of course, Dallas was up there. And I have to say, I'm going to have to ask Dallas, hopefully for the weekend's out. I mean, he's lost a lot of weight, I have to tell you. Probably a good at least 50, 75, if not 100 pounds. Yeah, because he was real pungy when he was the state director of AFP back in the early 2010s, earlier in the decade. Now these last couple years especially, he's lost a lot of weight. And I want to salute him for that. It's not easy, And yeah, I disagree with some of his actions, Mr. Woodhouse and Mr. Hayes. But, you still got to respect them. And you got to take your hat off to Mr. Woodhouse for losing a lot of weight. So, well, that pretty much wraps up the day. I am going to go to the hospitality suites tonight. I've never been. I'm hoping that, maybe I'll meet somebody. Maybe, I'm an introvert. I'm hoping maybe somebody will take the time and kick up a conversation with me, or maybe I'll actually do something out of character and kick up a conversation with somebody else. Because the only person I really met today was Carolyn Justice, who saw me and shook my hand and said, welcome back. I was like, hey, thank you. So, anyway, that is all I have to say. Tomorrow, day 2, we have a lot of speakers tomorrow. Business session is probably going to be very short and light. We just have 4 little resolutions to do tomorrow. I don't think any of them will be too controversial. Oh yeah, and by the way, there was also an emergency meeting of the Plan Organization Committee right after the business session ended on Friday. And we ended about 6:15 tonight is when we ended. So, and boy, something tells me that tomorrow, probably going to have a lot of free time tomorrow. And honestly, I don't really mind that because I have a lot of homework to do, and I'd rather, save some energy for Sunday when I go to the executive committee meeting. I'm hoping, I'm praying that we have quorum for that, because it's been, I keep going back to 2014 when we didn't have quorum, and I'm like, these knuckleheads that have to leave early. Oh my gosh, I'll be back in Raleigh by 3 o'clock. So anyway. And in my next video, I'll talk to you about my experience with hospitality suites, and maybe I'll be able to go to one of those breakfasts tomorrow, because, going to breakfast too many times in a convention by yourself, just kind of, I don't mind eating dinner by myself because I've been around people all day, and I'm an introvert, and I need some peace and quiet for a little while, but, breakfast in the morning, I don't mind a little company. So anyway, for the Conservative Pelican, I am Bobby Crawford, and this has been your Friday afternoon business session report, part 2. Bye-bye.